All right, let us get started with this Sunday school lesson for today's class. And what we're going to be covering today is the two women who raped their father before God gave them land for a possession. The two women who raped their father before God gave them land for a possession. And you notice in the green, it's called Afghanistan. What America, Russia, and Great Britain may not have understood about Afghanistan. We're going to try to show in this lesson how and what happened in the time of the beginning of the second 14,000 generation. The first 14,000 generations ended with God destroying the earth with water, and that was Noah. Noah was the last 500-year-old person when he begot his first son. When he had three sons, when he was 500 years old when they were born. But Noah spent quite a bit of his time building the ark, and he also was one of the two human beings, that walked with God. His great grandfather Enoch also walked with God, but not getting involved in that. This lesson here is about Afghanistan and the understanding, a lack of understanding that one may have about Afghanistan. And in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 9, and Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 19, we're going to cover that in the Sunday school lesson for today's class. And that's what we're going to show now. This is Genesis chapter 19 from Zoar. In Zoar, we're going to talk about that to the new Afghanistan. And Genesis 11:27 and Genesis 14:16 are just synopses of what we are going to be covering. One thing I do want to point out is Genesis 12:4 is that Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham, was 75 years old when he departed Haran. Haran was one of his brothers. Now, Torah, his father, had three sons. I understand them to be triplets. Don't see it in the lesson, don't see it outside of the lesson, but don't see any time in Chronicles or any place like that in the Bible to show that they were not triplets. Well, we're not going to get into that discussion, but just to point out that he was 75 years old when all of these things took place, and his nephew Lot, you can see in Genesis 11:31, and said he took Abram his son and Lot's son, Haram, the son of his son. That was, and his wife, his daughter-in-law. All this is part of the beginning of the second 14,000 generations. And it goes all the way down to David. King David was the beginning of the third 14,000 generations, down to the birth of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ ended the third 14,000 generations. And here we are today in the fourth 14,000 generation. And America just left Afghanistan after 20 years. Prior to that, Russia was there for 10 years. And prior to Russia going in there, Great Britain went in 3 times. So what we're talking about is what we are doing here now in the fourth 14,000 generations, going back into the third 14,000 generations. You notice we can't go back into the, I'm telling you in a second, we can't go back to the first 14,000 generations. Why? Because God destroyed it with water. And he's destroyed part of the second 14,000 generations, and what we're going to be talking about here today is what took place. The reason God destroyed the first 14,000 generations is in the answer of the other lessons, Sunday school lessons that we have done, to ask the question is, why did God say, let us make man in our image? Well, in results of that, down through the end of the first 14,000 generations, is God destroyed what he had put up on the earth, all mankind he had put up on the earth, with the exceptions of what Noah put on the ark. And then after Noah put on the ark, at the beginning of the second 14,000 generations is when Abraham actually, down through Lot, down through from Noah down to Abraham, was Noah's sons had sons and daughters, and out of that generation came Abraham. Now we're here now in Abraham, and Abraham is the beginning of the second 14,000 generations. And the second 14,000 generations are now being Well, there was a war going on with the America, Russia, and Great Britain in the second 14,000 generation people, because Abraham is no longer there. Lot is no longer there, but their generations are there. We're going to show you Abraham's chart in just a minute. That should give you an idea of what we're talking about. Let us move on with this significance of the yellow, and make sure you stop this information and read these synopsis verses, because they are all related to what this lesson is about. This Sunday school lesson is about Sodom and Gomorrah. It's about Lot and Abraham, or Abram, when they started out in the second 14,000 generations, and how it's affecting us here today in the fourth 14,000 generation. Don't know if there's going to be a fifth 14,000 generation. Don't really know. We just know that we are in the third, or I'm sorry, in the fourth 14,000 generation. And how long that's going to be. Is it going to go 14,000 generations? We don't know. But we're going to talk about that later on. Let us move on. This is the continuation of the synopsis of it. And at the bottom, we got today's Sodom and Gomorrah: men marrying men, women marrying women in the fourth 14,000 generation. That's today. Well, in the in the first 14,000 generation, it was the same thing going on. Why God said, let us make man in our image. That was the first 14,000 generation that he destroyed the first 14,000 generation with a flood, with water. And in the beginning of the second 14,000 generation, Abraham is the beginning of that generation, 14,000, and Abraham's nephew Lot and ended up in Sodom. And Sodom was a place where men were marrying women marrying women. We're gonna go through all that in a minute. And but what we're saying is that now we're down here in the fourth 14,000 generation, and the same thing that's going on that was going on in the first and the second 14,000 generation is going on in here in the fourth 14,000 generation, because we do still have men marrying men and women marrying women. That's going on today. Whether we understand it or not, it is nothing has changed. What we're saying is from the first down through the second, down through the third, and here we are now in the fourth with the same thing that was going on in the first, second, and the third 14,000 generations. That's what we're talking about. Moving on. Here is what this looked like in today in the fourth 14,000 generation, somewhat different than what it looked back in the second 14,000 generation. But this is Afghanistan and regions of the whole area of where Afghanistan is located. We're not going to spend a lot of time on none of these pictures because this is a very long lesson. We got 30 slides to go. Here is the depiction, and I'm sure it's just a depiction of what we're really talking about. This is Lot and his two daughters. After Lot had left Sodom, where Sodom was all just a place where God just could not, could not let it exist, because he had already destroyed the first area in the first 14,000 generations, destroyed with water, where men were marrying men, women marrying women. That was going on in the first 14,000 generation, because the sons of God who left their estates, see that in Second Peter, you see it also in the book of Jude, you also see it in the 6th chapter of the book of Genesis, left their estate and came to the earth and married the women of the earth, and the offsprings didn't know if it was a male or female, even though here we are in the fourth 14,000 generation, and there are some people in the fourth 14,000 generation who really think man has a man body but has a woman's mind, or a woman with a woman's body that has a man's mind. That is going on today. That's why we have women marrying women and men marry men here in the fourth 14,000 generation. Well, here in this picture that's depicted here on this lesson is that this is supposed to be Lot and his daughters, and his daughters are the one that raped their father. We just putting it down where the goats can get it. The daughters got their father drunk, and we'll see that in Deuteronomy. You'll see that also in other parts of Genesis. They got their father drunk and said, "Let us get pregnant by our father so that his seed can go on." That's what the daughters conjured up among themselves to rape their father, so getting him so drunk that he didn't know what was going on. So, and they lived in caves in the region of Afghanistan of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what we find when America went into Afghanistan to have war against Afghanistan, trying to get Afghanistan to do what we are doing in America. Well, we're not doing anything different in America than what they're doing in Afghanistan. They just mistreat all people. Different kinds of people in America are not accepted by others, and the women in America are not accepted. Couldn't vote at one time. They were not equalized with man. Man thought he's more than a woman, but well, God did set a rule back up in Genesis when He told Eve that her husband would rule over her. So God does have an order for doing things, but it all depends on the understanding of this word rule, because He also gave the male and the female that He created in His image, He gave them the power to rule over the atmosphere, the sun, the moon, the stars, the ground. He gave them the authority to rule over it, but their rule is different than man's rule, because man is somewhat different than any other creature, even though he was made or breathed into the dust, which was sin, and the dust became with a living soul in the dust. All we are dust, and our living soul is all we have. And when our living soul leaves the dust is going to go back to the origin of sin from which it came. Here's a map of what we're talking about. These are the kingdoms. You notice on the kingdoms of Israel, it's kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Ammon, the kingdom of Moab, the kingdom of Edom. All these are the different kind of kingdoms that was in the second 14,000 generation, and they're here on earth today in the fourth 14,000 generation. They were not there in the first 14,000 generation, but they did come alive in the second 14,000 generation down through the third 14,000 generation down to where we are today in the fourth 14,000 generation. The kingdom of Judah is one significant one. You notice that Jerusalem is in the kingdom of Judah. Jerusalem is not in the kingdom of Israel. Jerusalem is in the kingdom of Judah. And from Judah came Jesus Christ. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And but you see the kingdom of Moab or the Moabites, the kingdom of Amoram or the Amorites, well, those were the offsprings between Lot and his daughters. But each of them now have kingdoms, and what we call Afghanistan is the location of these kingdoms. That's significant of what we're showing in this slide. Stop this information, study this for yourself. And I say study and go and research it. And don't Google is not a research engine. It's a different. Just research it. Don't let it um, be something that you can't understand. Okay, moving on. Here are the area of Afghanistan even today. Well, when Lot and his daughters, that's what the Zohar, back up the word, we saw that the word while I go Zohar, his daughters, when they left Sodom, their wife turned to a pillar of salt. So they went and to live into the mountains of what we call today Afghanistan in the rocks. And when Russia came out to tell America, you can't go up into the rocks and fight these people because they live in the mountains, in the caves in the mountain, and we don't have a means to get up to where they are. And they know how to go up and come down. They just know about the mountain. They live inside of the mountain in caves. And you'll see that in this picture here that's describing where they live today. You see the child standing in the doorway? Well, this is inside of the mountain. Okay, so understanding how these persons were living in the second 14,000 generations past the third 14,000 generation, called David down to David is the beginning of the third 14,000 generation. And from David down to Jesus Christ is a complete third 14,000 generation. And after Jesus Christ is where we are today in the fourth 14,000 generation. And we're moving on with this lesson now. Okay, here we are. The names are the same until this day. And that's really in the Bible. You see, I took that directly from the Bible. And this is chapter 19:1 through 19:36 in the book of Genesis. When you study that, and I hope that you do stop this information, you'll see that there came two angels to Sodom, even and Lot sat in the gate. And then notice that word gate, I put it in black, so you can see that even Afghanistan today, they're trying to leave Afghanistan to come back to America and other parts of the world, and they have to go through different gates. The gates still exist. And the gate of Sodom and Lot seeing them, rose up and to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, and said, Behold now, my Lord, turn in, I pray you, and your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your way. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the streets. Well, Lot knew that that wasn't good, because what was going on in the street, Lot knew about, but he didn't. Well, let's go on. And he pursued unto them greatly, and they turned unto him and entered into his house. That was a good thing for them, well, them according to what Lot thought, but he didn't know the power of the angels. And we'll go on through this, and you'll see what happened, that the men of the city of Sodom wanted to rape the two angels that went into Lot's house, and Lot insisted to send his daughters out, and they said, No, no, no. Look down in verse 5, and they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men that you came into your house this night? Bring them out that we may know them. Okay, so they wanted to rape those men, and Lot didn't do that. Lot wanted to send his daughters out. You look down in 6 and keep on going down through. Now, I'm not going to read each one for you, because all you got to do is just stop this video and read it for yourself, and you'll see that the men, the angels that was in Lot's house, they wanted to, they knew they wasn't going to rape him, because you see down later on that they turned all the men, they turned their eyes and blind, and they blinded the men. And I pray you bring them out unto us, that and do you unto them whatever your eyes be. A lot is telling the men, take my two daughters who have not known a man, and you can have them and do whatever we want to do to them. So that's what's happening in Afghanistan today. The men in Afghanistan will take a 5, 6, 7 year old girl and wait till she get to a certain age as a child, and then make her his wife and do whatever he wants to do. That's not new. That's what's going on in Afghanistan today, and it really is going on in America today, even though it's not publicized in America like it is in Afghanistan, because we publicize it in Afghanistan, and it's easier to point the finger at someone else, and you are 3 times as worse as the person you're pointing the finger at. But we do point the finger at Afghanistan to say that the women in Afghanistan are not treated the way the women in America are treated. But yet, look at the women in America. The first rape that we just showed you here, the first rape that we see was raped by 2 women, sisters, raped their father, got him drunk, and had children by their father. That was in the second 14,000 generation. It may have taken place in the first 14,000 generation. We don't know. Didn't find it in the Bible, but we just don't know. We do know in the second 14,000 generation it took place. And if it was going on in the first, we do know that it's happening right here now in the fourth. The same thing, the same treatment of the women in the first or the second 14,000 generation as being taking place right here today. But the same thing. Look, I just said now, understanding this whole process, man don't understand God. We really don't understand God, and we do need to study God in order to get an understanding. And God said, above all our getting, for us to get an understanding. Just moving on now. Make sure you slow this process down by just looking at these slides. Now, we're continuing on. This is 19:1 through 19:36, and this is all part of this lesson. I'm not going to go through all this in here, but we'll look at verse 14, saying, Lot went out and spoke unto his son-in-laws, okay, which married his daughters. So the 2 daughters that son Lot wanted to give to the men who wanted to break in and rape the angels, Lot had just those 2 daughters who were virgins. And he told those men they had not known a man. They didn't want the virgins, they wanted the men. And Lot, you see here, the significance is to show you that Lot had sons-in-laws, not just one, but more than one, because the word sons are plural, in-laws, which married his daughters. So see, his daughters didn't leave Sodom. Only Lot and his 2 daughters, who were virgins, and his wife left Sodom. And then his wife turned back. You see all this down here in this lesson, and looked back, and she turned to a pillar of salt. And then the daughters and Lot left, And then God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to show that in a few minutes. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with brimstones and fire down from heaven and turned the whole plain, because Sodom and Gomorrah was cities in the plain. The whole plain, everything in the cities, all of the mountains, everything was turned to salt, big ball of salt through the fire and the brimstone that came down from heaven. You'll see that in a few minutes when we get there. But now, just to give you some background of this now, is to show that sons-in-laws and the daughters stayed in Sodom. They were destroyed by God, and He brought the fire and the brimstone down upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Moving on through this, then down to verse 24 said, Then the Lord rained down upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstones and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and overthrew those cities and all the plains and all of the inhabitants of the city that which grew up on the ground. So everything was destroyed by God in that region in the in the beginning of the second of 14,000 generation. Because we notice now is that the ending of the first 14,000 generation were water. So during the short period of time, don't know how long that is, from the time that Abraham and down to where he's now with Lot, his nephew, is destroyed with fire and brimstone. Just those two cities, or the cities within that region, including all of the inhabitants of the land, not just necessarily in the river, but out in the suburbs as well, were destroyed. That's here is what we're talking about. Make sure you stop this and study for yourself. I'm moving on for the sake of time. Okay, this is the end of this. A picture that says worth 1,000 words, but you can stop this and read it for yourself. But this is how the Moabites and the Amorites look. Now, the Moab, you see, let's look at verse 35. Say, and they made their father drunk and with wine that night also, and the youngest arose and lay with him, and perceived, and not when she lay down, nor when she rose, a son is called by the name of Moab. You see, so she had the first child, and the second child, which is the father of the Moabites, until this day. Until this day. So what was going on in Afghanistan was being fought by America, the Moabites and the Amorites, until this day. 38 says the same thing. And the youngest one, she also bore a son and called his name Bamarama, the same as the father of the Amorites unto this day. So you see, the Amorites and the Moabites, they're there until this day. That's what we speak. That's what we're saying. So when America went into Afghanistan, some of us may not have known about the Amorites and the Moabites. We just may not have known. Here's a picture of a map of Afghanistan even today. Kabul is where the capital is, and that's where all the people now are trying to leave Afghanistan. And so look at the surrounding areas, though. You see Iran, a few minutes you see Pakistan, in a few minutes I can show you India, I can show you China. All this is in a part of that region that we're talking about, and I'm going to show you how that region got so populated in just a minute. Okay, looking at this is another map of Afghanistan. You see something that I really want to show is India. You see China up in the upper right part of the map. You see India. You see Iran, Turkestan, Uzbekistan. All this is part of the whole region that we were in, and you see how I'm going to show you in a few minutes why India, who came out and who to India, and what happened to China, how they got there. Well, we're talking about in the beginning, during the beginning years of the second 14,000 generation. You see, even though this is here today, but what we're talking about is all these nations that rose up, and where they came from, what we're going to be showing you. That's right here. So where are you among the seed of Abraham? And look at the seed of Abraham, because remember now, everything above Abraham at the end of Noah was destroyed by water. So Abraham was the beginning of the second 14,000 generation. And this is the seed of Abraham, Hagar, which was, and you see the Ishmael and all the 12 sons of Ishmael. They had sons and daughters. You see Isaac. Isaac had twins, Esau and Jacob. And you see Esau's people down at the bottom. You see Jacob's 12 sons down in the bottom. And then after Sarah died at 120 years, then Abraham remarried, and you see Keturah. Keturah, she had 6 sons. And then the other two, that's why Abraham had 8 seed. And God promised Abraham that I'm going to bless your seed. So he had 8 sons. And I'm suggesting that from these 6 sons that Keturah had, and the 12 sons that Jacob had, and the 5 sons that uh, Esau had, and all the 12 tribes of Ishmael, is that this is the population of the earth. This is what we're looking at when we look at Afghanistan, we look at China, we look at Iran, we look at Iraq. All this is part of the whole region. And this is of the seed of Abraham. This is of the seed of Abraham. We're not going to spend too much time, but the question is, where do you find yourself among the seed of Abraham? And then why are you so much against this, that, or the other person who you think are not as good as you are? And that you think that God has a favor over you, over other people. Don't understand that. We don't have that because we're all under the auspices of God. God is the only living entity. Everything else is dead, or they rely on the entity of God, which is a spirit, in order to live. He is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. That's the understanding that he's asking all of us to get, and above all our getting, he wants us to get understanding. So this is how this whole process started. Just this picture here. Now I hope that you understand and study these pictures so you can see what is taking place up on the earth today. And it all started here. Moving on, we got a long ways to go. Here, here's another map of the Afghanistan. You see Afghanistan, you see the capital of Afghanistan is where everybody's trying to get out now, Kabul. Everyone is trying to get out of Kabul now because America's no longer there. America also went and had a war in Kuwait City. You see Kuwait, Iran. We didn't have one in Iran yet, but nevertheless, what we're saying is that all these region here is where we are. Now, I want to point out something we showed a while ago: the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. I didn't express that a few minutes ago, but how I'll go back and get that later on. But this is the Kuwait city, and that we were there before we went into Afghanistan. That's what I wanted to point out here. Okay, moving on. Again, we keep showing this. This is Afghanistan, Turkestan, Uzbekistan. We're showing China. We're showing all these, Pakistan. We're showing Iran. All these areas here within the area of Afghanistan. And you'll see different areas. You see the capital still there, but the other areas, how large Afghanistan really is. You see, compared to, let's compare with America. This is some pretty sizable land that we have to go through when we look at the whole area. We don't know, have an idea of Iran, Pakistan, or India, where we know there's quite a few people in India, China, huge populated people, but we don't know what goes on in it every day. If we do, we don't tell each other. But nevertheless, moving on. Here now is another part of that synopsis of what we're showing a few minutes ago in Genesis 11:27, and we stopped down at verse 19:1 because we already given information from 19:1 to 19:36, and we're not going to go through that again. This is just to point out some things that you really want to know, and you can stop this information and read it for yourself. Look at 12:4 says, so Abram, whose name had not been changed, and this was put into the Bible, for God did change Abram's name to Abraham, departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed. That's the point I want to make, that he was up in the age when he left Haran, and that Haran is the name of one of his brothers' city. You see back up in the 11:27, you'll see that his father, who his father was, and his 3 brothers, his 2 brothers. But Abram was one of the 3, and that's why I'm suggesting that this is where the trio came from, which was triplets. We don't see any other place in the Bible, in 2 the Chronicles, that there were not triplets, that there were not triplets. I don't know. It doesn't say, because I was asked one time, how do you figure that they were triplets? Because I don't see where it doesn't say they were triplets. So if you can show me where they were triplets, then I will accept that. But until that happens, I'm going to believe that they were triplets. But nevertheless, you notice the Perizzites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, all these are different people in this area at the beginning, I keep on saying this now, of the second 14,000 generation. And all this took place. You see, Jordan is a river, and of the plains of Jordan is where most of these people lived around the river, and also in the Dead Sea and all these areas around the whole area. And we'll point that out when we get there in a few minutes. But look down to 13:14. It said, the Lord said unto Abram after pitching your tent towards Sodom, and he said unto Abram after pitching, I know I'm going to that, no, yeah, 13:14. And the Lord said unto Abram after pitching, no, and that Lot was separated from him, and lift up your eyes and look from the place where northward, southward, eastward, and westward. So all this area is what God is going to give to Abraham. And he's going to just split it up by lots among the children of Israel and the children of Lot. It's amazing why we as Americans think that just in Bible studies that God gave land to the children of Israel, which he did, but whose name was Jacob, and he changed his name to Israel. And then God changed Abraham's name from Abram to Abraham. He let Lot's name stay the same. But what I'm saying is God gave Lot, just like he did Abraham, he gave Lot land just like he did the children of Israel. That's what I want to point out in it. And there came two angels to Sodom at the evening, and we saw this a while ago. It's just a repeat to show you how this the synopsis of Genesis, and this is another part of that synopsis to show you what happened. And what I do want to point out though is down in 1930, and Lot went out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. He feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in caves and his two daughters. That's what I wanted to show you. I showed you a while ago that when America went into Afghanistan, they didn't understand how the people lived in the mountains and in the caves. Well, they've been living in the mountains and the cave from the beginning of the second 14,000 generation down through the third 14,000 generation, and here to date in the fourth 14,000 generation, still living in the caves. We didn't understand that, but that's what he did. He moved his family, his daughters, in the caves, and it was in the caves that the daughters decided that they weren't going to rape the father. That's what we're talking about. And they grew up in those caves, and when they spread it out, and I'm going to show you how to spread it out. I just showed you a while ago with Keturah and all of the sons of Jacob and all the sons of Ishmael and all the sons of Esau. Well, that's how the population began to be populated. Okay, so America, you know what America is. America wasn't born. America came from other parts of the world and into America. Everybody in America wasn't born in America. They came to America from other parts of America and had families here in America. And now they're thinking that they're more than those people where they came from. That's what we're talking about. No. Okay, this is a continuation of the synopsis, but down in Deuteronomy 9 is what I wanted to show. Deuteronomy 2:9 said, and the Lord said unto me, distress not for the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle. I will not give you their land for a possession, because because I have given Aaron unto the children of Lot for a possession. So you see, God has given them their land for a possession. That's what I'm trying to tell you. But we are there fighting over their land that was given to them by God in the second 14,000 generation. They never had it from the second 14,000 generation down through the third 14,000 generation and here today in the fourth 14,000 generation. But we want to try to take something from them because we want it. One of our presidents said we should take the oil. Why? Why? God will make a way for you. Why you want to take what someone else has? But this is what God has said, and said the same thing in 29 that 2:19 that he said the same thing about the Amorites. He had given them their land for possession. So the two women that raped their father, their sons got possessions from the Lord or land that God gave to them. That's what we're talking about. Well, God gave Jacob land, and he gave Esau land, or he know he gave it to Jacob, but Jacob had tricked Esau to take something that was not his. He stole Esau's birthright, and then God still blessed Jacob because Jacob was down through him was going to come Judah. So you see, God doesn't have respect for anybody because God is in control of everything and nothing catches him by surprise. He said, let us make man in our image. Well, there's a reason why he said that even from then up to now, because here it is, we've come down through now 14,000 generations, and God is still in control of all things, so nothing catches him by surprise. But look at Luke 17:28 said, likewise, also as it was in the days of Lot, as it was in the days of Lot. Now we're in Luke now. Luke is writing in the fourth 14,000 generation. Luke is in the fourth 14,000 generation, but he's talking about what took place in the second 14,000 generation. This is the Holy Spirit talking to Luke to tell you and I in the days of Lot, as they did eat and drink, they brought and they sold their planes and built. And Luke 17:29 said, but the day Lot went out of Sodom and rained down brimstone and fire from heaven and destroyed it all. And remember Lot's wife? This is Luke telling us this. So Luke is reminding us what took place back in the second 14,000 generation. And Luke is doing this writing in the fourth 14,000 generation. Does American law allowing men and women to marry one another violates the law explained by what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah that was destroyed by fire? The same thing. There's a pictures are worth 1,000 words. So this is Sodom and Gomorrah after God had destroyed it with fire and brimstone. And the reason why is because of what was taking place between the men and the women. That's what we're talking about. So nothing catches him by surprise. He don't know that what's going on in America and whether or not it violates his law. Well, it does. But, like he said, I am the Lord, and Malachi, he said, I am the Lord, I change not, but I can't just kill you now. That's what he said. I can just destroy you now because you're being disobedient to me. I can just destroy you, but I'm going to give you a second chance. I'm going to even give you a second chance to die and come again. It's called a second death. You're going to have a chance. You may be there longer, and you may have to wait in the sides of the pit until I do. But meanwhile, you will get an understanding of me and more about me. The three major sins that man have is lying, lust, and pride. The three majors, one of the three majors, the three major sins that we know that all human beings have is lying, lust, and pride. And our pride won't let us tell the truth because pride God hates pride. That's why he chastised Job over pride, lying, lust, and pride. He hates it. Now let's move on. Here again is the Great Sea. You see the Great Sea on the upper left side, and you see the Dead Sea. But look at the Dead Sea. What is opposite of the Dead Sea? Sodom and Gomorrah is right on the Dead Sea. You see the Amorites and the Moabites. Well, the Amorites and the Moabites live near the Dead Sea, and they Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why we just came out. Another point I wanted to point out here, you see the Hittites, you see the Philistines, you see the Canaanites, you see the Hivites, you see the Jebusites. All these are Amorites. All these are part of this whole area where Sodom and Gomorrah is located. And Sodom and Gomorrah is even there today. We just don't really realize it because one time we thought it was a great big old mountain. When it's not, it's ash where God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah even today. And we can see it today. Now that was destroyed in the second 14,000 generation. But down through the third 14,000, it's still there. And here we are here today, up to this point here today, in the fourth 14,000 generation, and Sodom and Gomorrah is still there. That's what we're pointing out. Moving on. We keep showing the maps. Pakistan, India, or she keeps showing the map in China and Iran, Turkestan, which keep showing the maps as where it is today. Because this is today. It is today. Well, we're there for a long time. Here's what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. This is a picture of what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. This is why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And the same things are going on today. Even today, we're still carrying on the same thing that was happening in Sodom and in Gomorrah and all the cities around it. And God destroyed it with a ball of fire. And the same thing is going on in the fourth 14,000 generation that took place in the first 14,000 generation, because the first 14,000 generation was destroyed by water, except what Noah put on the ark. And what came off the ark was Sodom and Gomorrah. It's amazing. And all the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. And here we are today, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. But everybody, according to the Bible, didn't get destroyed in Sodom and Gomorrah. And here we are today with another Sodom and Gomorrah on its way up, because the same thing that was happening in Sodom and Gomorrah then are happening now. That's what we're talking about. We're moving on. This is how Sodom and Gomorrah look today. Yep, looks like a mountain, but it's ashes, where God destroyed it, not just the cities, but he also did the same thing to the plain, the ground. And they're finding salt caves in this area. They go into the caves, and in the caves are nothing but salt caves. What God destroyed with fire and brimstone out of heaven. Moving on. Again, Sodom and Gomorrah. Here, look at where Jerusalem is, Jericho, Bethlehem, and Judah. All this is apart. But look at the location of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Sodom and Gomorrah is located in the region of Jerusalem, in the region of Bethlehem, in the region of Jericho. And Jericho was a city that they marched around and it fell down. The walls fell down in Jericho. But look where Sodom and Gomorrah is located in comparison. Well, where we are in America, you notice how close Jerusalem is to the body of water there. That's the sea. Okay, so all this is a part of what this Sunday school lesson is about. And for today's class, we're almost finished with this. This is just a depiction to show what Sodom and Gomorrah looks like down at the bottom right, what was going on with Lot and his daughters, and then what was taking place in Sodom and Gomorrah before God turned everybody in, because it was what came out of, we have a saying that what stay what will leave here stays there. We go to here. What leaves, what happens in Washington D.C. stays in Washington D.C. That's our saying, right? But this didn't happen. What happened in Sodom and Gomorrah came out of Sodom and Gomorrah, because Lot and his daughters came out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, his daughters knew what their sisters and their brother-in-laws was doing in Sodom and Gomorrah. They didn't leave Sodom and Gomorrah. It was only Lot and his two virgin daughters and his wife who left Sodom and Gomorrah. But his wife had something she had to look back to see in Sodom and Gomorrah, and God turned her into a pillar of salt. When the daughters came out of Sodom and Gomorrah, they were virgins, because the men didn't want the virgins. And Lot knew the virgins now raped their father. They had not known man, but they did know enough to rape their father, to have children by the father. It is truly amazing. And that's what this picture is trying to demonstrate. Now here, what we're doing here is to say this is happening today. Yep, but this is Deuteronomy 2:9 and Deuteronomy 2:19, just to show you what took place, and God gave them land to possess after they left, after they had raped the father. That's what we're talking about. Moving on, we're almost finished. 3 or 4 more to go. Okay, now here again, I keep showing this over and over again to give you an idea of what to look for if the life doesn't change. If whatever it is, if I don't change my life, this is what I can look for. If I were to go out and do the things that I know that some people are doing, marrying a man, even one of the governors just got married just yesterday. He married a man according to God. No, 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 no. But I'm not, don't judge or try to, hoping I'm not trying to judge, but judgment is on. Judgment is coming. You see that here. Sodom and Gomorrah found judgment. They did. God judged them and he destroyed them because they weren't doing what God wanted them to do. A man can't have a child. A woman can't produce a child with another woman. A man can't produce a child with another man. So you got to take someone else's child If you want a child, you have to take someone else's child. But the other person who may have a child may not want the child. They may want to give the child to a man and a man. May want to give the child to a woman. Well, who is wrong? You see what I'm saying? So we are just a mess. That's all I can say. I'm talking about the human body, the human mind is just a mess. But this is just to give you a depiction of what took place at this point in time. Again, I keep showing you Sodom and Gomorrah, keep showing it over and over again to show you how the plains is now just brimstone. We don't know how long and how powerful it was, but we do know that the God has power among our imagination, and you can see this look like a mountain, but it's really ash where it was burned with fire and brimstone. Okay, so a little moving on. This is now in the conclusion of this whole process. This is my name is David. This is from the book of David. And you get all these Sunday school lessons in the book of David YouTube video.com. The book of David YouTube video.com. It'll give you all of these lessons. Now the book of David is not it's videos. That's all it is, just videos. And it's the book of David. And I am David. I'm going to show you my picture in a few minutes. And Jesus Christ is the bread of life. You need to know that this is one of the lessons, Sunday school lessons I hope you do not pass, to know that Jesus Christ is the bread of life. And if you eat that bread, then there won't be a Sodom and Gomorrah in your life if you eat the bread of Jesus Christ. That is to accept him as your Lord and Savior, and then follow his commandments, and do his will, and then you will be living in paradise with him. There are two places that we're going to live when we leave the body. When our body die, we got two places to live. We can either go to the paradise for Jesus Christ, or we can go to the pits of hell. There's only two places there. We got two choices, and we can make that choice. God gave us the right to make a choice. If we want to continue to be doing what we're doing, it's our choice. That's why one should not judge another. God don't have no respect to person. He only knows what's in the person. That's his spirit, and he's in control. He's the only living entity that lives, and his life, your life, is him inside of you. He don't judge you. He gave you a choice. If you want to die and go to the pit, then he'll say, okay, have a good day, have a good life inside of the pit. But if you want to live and live in paradise with Jesus Christ, okay, he'll say, look, I will accept you, but you cannot go right. You can't come to me and do that over there. You gotta let go of that over there in order to stay with me. I'm not going to accept you standing halfway over here or halfway over there. I won't do that. I spew you out. That's what he's saying in the book of Revelation. I spew you out. You can't do that. You can't stay married to a woman and then serve me. A man, you can't stay married to a man and serve me too. It's not against. It's not. I destroyed 2 times. I destroyed the earth. I told you with water, and I destroyed it the second time with fire. So you can't do that because I'm not going to tolerate it. That's what God is saying. But you have the choice. It's your choice. In conclusion of this, my name is David. This is me, a picture of me. I'm a graduate of University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and you can see when I graduated from 1963 to 1967, I was an accounting business transformation major. Now, my cashback bank is an opportunity for you to get some information that you perhaps need. Now, make sure you visit that, my cashback bank. I want to conclude this. I want to thank you for watching. Okay. Now, excuse me, my voice is not going to let me continue on, and I really did want to recite the Lord's Prayer that he prayed before he died, and you'll find it in John 17 from 1 through 26, where he did pray, Father, that I was come to glorify your Son, that your Son may also glorify you as you have given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as you have given him, and this is life eternal, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, in whom he have sent. That I glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work for which you gave me to do, and now, O Father, glorify you me with your own self, with the glory which I had with you before the world was. Make sure you go there and study that and learn that prayer and recite it. And whatever it is that you've been doing, you're going to do things different, because then you will realize that you can't go any further, because God answers your prayer. When you say, Lord have mercy, this is a prayer. And he answered his son's prayer when your son was praying for you before he died. And if you can get that in your spirit, you'll have a better understanding of what God is all about. Thank you for watching this. My name is David. Have a good day. I love you. Bye-bye.